Here we
Hey,
are.
Charles.
All right, there you are. Hey, sorry about that. I had to figure out the Instagram live there. Well, good to see you, Jacquelyne. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Your corn looks better than mine. I was making fun of my California corn here. We don't have the heat units that you guys do. We get fog every night.
I wasn't going to make too much fun of yours, but I definitely agree. Mine looks a little better.
Yours looks a lot better. I'm finally getting some silk over my shoulder here. Well, awesome.
Yeah, but
well,
how about those FB and beans back there, though? They look pretty good, too, yeah?
Oh, yeah. There they are over there in that top corner. That's your F2F?
Yeah, right there.
All right. Looking good. Looking good. Well, thanks, everyone. We've got people joining in from all over the country. So I'm here with Jacquelyne Leffler in Americus, Kansas. And we're going to have a great chat here to talk about Jacquelyne's business and what's going on the farm these days. So Jacquelyne, tell us where you're at. Where are you coming to us from right now? And tell us about the farm.
Yeah, so I live in, and basically I'm the fourth generation of Leffler Farms Incorporated. So I work every day on the farm with my dad full time. We're a typical Kansas farm and ranch, and so we have corn, soybeans, and wheat. And then we also have stocker cattle and feeder cattle as well. And that's where my part of the business, Leffler Prime Performance, comes into play. And I market all of our cattle that turn into fat cattle and sell them direct to consumers. So a little bit of a value-added business, and it's been pretty great these last couple months.
That's great. And so tell me about the journey back to the farm, because you had a really interesting background. Started as a D1 athlete, K-State, track and field, and to tell us about the transition back to coming back onto the farm and then starting up these businesses as you've gotten going.
Yeah, so like Charles said, I went to Kansas State University on a full ride track and field scholarship. I was a thrower, so I threw anything from shot put, discus, and hammer mainly. Spent 5 years there, had a great time, had a great career. Ultimately, injuries kind of got the best of me, so when my eligibility was up, I decided I need to probably do something that could make me money instead of having surgeries all the time. And so I ended up back on our farm. Kansas State is one of the best agricultural schools in the U.S., and I did ag while I was there. And I actually ended up with a pre-med degree and family studies and human services degree. And so I actually just kind of moved into the house that I live in now and planned for a storage unit rather than a home until I could find a job. And I started helping out, and it's been 5 or 6 years, and so far I haven't left. So I ended up just sticking around and staying on the farm instead of pursuing something else.
Yeah. And when you first came back, did you take on a piece of the farm that you were started managing with the family, or then as you started Leffler Prime Performance, how did you decide to start that business?
Yeah, so I was basically just anything and everything my grandpa needed at the time. He was still on the farm. And so I was kind of his gopher, and I'd like to say that I helped, but I think I might have was in the way more often than not at the beginning. But it was a super great time. I learned a lot from him, living facility. But, it was super great to have 3 generations on the farm all at one time. And so my job was literally, I was just a hired hand. And then I kind of got into the technology side of things, which is what brought me into FBN, network there. And then in 2014, 15, I started Leffler Prime Performance. And so I quit coaching collegiately at State University. The first couple years I was back, as well as farming and ranching that weren't making me any money. And so I decided just to stick with farming and ranching, and that's where Leffler Prime Performance really came from. I put my love and passion of track and field of coaching, which is the performance part, and then I took the cattle part, which is the prime part of Leffler Prime Performance, and that's when I really started to mold my own little path and start that way. So I do have my own cattle now, and I have my own land, and so I've done a lot and grown a lot in the last 5 years, but it's sure been a journey.
That's awesome. And for anyone joining in, feel free to put any questions. If you want to ask anything to Jacquelyne or ask anything about FBN, just put it in the chat box, and we will try and get to it as best we can here. So hello to everyone who's joining from all across the country. So Jacquelyne, tell us, recently COVID has really had a lot of impacts on the agricultural system in a number of ways. It really changed the whole profile of consumer demand, with shutting down traffic into grocery stores or in restaurants, and really shifting, a lot of traffic into grocery stores. And then you had folks not able to get meat. You had meat shortages. And of course, it's impacted commodity prices in a major way. Tell us what the last few months have been like for your business, and really, I think probably tell everyone what all about Leffler Prime Performance and how it works, because I think it's an amazing story here in the adaptability of farms in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, so I was working ground late, I guess it was in February, and my phone started ringing, and I couldn't figure out why all these people were calling me and wanting beef. And I'm pretty up on the news, but I didn't realize there had been a few headlines hit that, COVID was going to be a real thing, and people needed to start preparing and realizing that grocery stores may not be stocked all the time. And, from that point on, my phone went almost 2 solid weeks where I maybe slept 3 or 4 hours a day and took order time. And so typically I'm selling our own cattle, our fat cattle. And typically I was, raising them myself and, just feeding out maybe 5 or 6 at a time, 3 or 4 times a year. And that scale was not going to work for the need that was there. And so I went in, tapped into Leffler Farms, Inc., which is our family operation. And we feed out at Polanski Ranch in Strong City, Kansas. And I got a hold of that owner and I said, hey, I just sold all of our cattle at the beginning of February before this happened. And that's when I realized, hey, I've got to do something a little different and get creative. And so he actually couldn't get any loads out of his feedlot. And so somehow in front of Tyson and Cargill, I became his highest buyer most weeks. And so I was buying the Polanski Ranch cattle until my family's cattle was ready to go again in August. And so we've been filling the gap there between Jason Polanski's cattle and, they're all about the same. So I'm being able to put out a consistent product, which is exactly what my customers want. But there was a new website that developed on Facebook. It was a new page called Shop Kansas Farms, and it kind of just blew up the system. I mean, I went from usually 20 head a year. By the end of December of 2020, I'll have put 170 cattle through my local locker.
Wow.
And so, it's just been insane. And to answer Kale's question there, do I ship to Nebraska? I wish. I actually am set up at a custom butcher. It's called Allen Meat Processing in Allen, Kansas. And it's a custom base. And so I can't sell out of my freezer at my home. It all has to be picked up at the butcher. So I can't ship either. But to me, that's a huge benefit because I'm so busy on our regular farm and ranch jobs, that I'm just having to deliver cattle up there, take questions and answers and all that good stuff for my clientele list, but then they're having to pick up and do the legwork on that end. So efficiency wise for right now, I think that's the way I'll have to go with big numbers like this.
Yeah, and so you had already set up the business before COVID hit. I mean, you had been doing this, and had been a part of your farm's enterprise, and with the timing of COVID, that really caused a sudden demand shock. Talk about the process of what it was like to set up the business and how it works. How does somebody buy from Leffler Performance, and what advice would you have to other farmers who are wanting to get started in selling direct?
Yeah, so I kind of got started because my sister and I showed 4-H animals growing up, and at the end of every fair, we would always have a premium sale. But then we always had an animal that wasn't sold, and so we'd have to find somebody to buy it or my family would eat it, And so that's when I decided as an adult, when I wasn't in 4-H anymore, people still want this. Why am I not doing this? And so I was so just looking to fill a gap here locally. And I'm literally talking just within my county, within my town. And that's kind of how it really got started. Nothing special, nothing fancy. I try to keep everything as simple as possible. I tell everybody I'm trying to be a Whole Foods product at a Walmart price. And when I say that, I mean, I'm just trying to put out a really good product at a price that people can afford. And so right now I'm at $2.20 hanging weight. And then they pay the processing. And so at a custom plant, you have to sell the animal live. It has to be in somebody's name before you can take it to the locker. And so I just have literally hundreds of spreadsheets that I just hand into the locker when I deliver those animals. And so everything's set up before I go into the locker, which makes things go really smooth. And so typically, if let's say Charles wanted to buy a beef from me, he would just call me up and he'd say, hey, I'm a big spender. I want to buy a whole animal. And I'd say, that's great. And I would say, but I'm really sorry. I'm booked out till December 22nd of 2020. So you're going to have to wait a while. And then I have them put down a deposit. And then I let them know when I get that deposit. And then next thing you know, December rolls around and you got the best Christmas present ever. So it's pretty simple. We dry age all 18 days as well. That really gives it the good flavor, helps break it down, makes it just, super tender and good, and it's unlike anything you'll ever buy at the store. So it's pretty simple. I'm trying not to make anything complicated.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. And how about on the technology? What it actually took to create the business? You've been doing it over the phone and with spreadsheets. You have a website, but you're not taking the orders through the website, right? It's not.
Correct.
Technology has not been a barrier to getting this going.
No, absolutely not. The only real struggle that I've had technology-wise, rural broadband problems. We don't always have good internet out here. We don't always have great cell phone service. And so that's been the biggest struggle. I think the internet repair guys were probably really tired of me those first 2 months that it really started to get busy. But you can't really do your job if you don't have an internet system that works. And so, that's the technology, I guess, that I'm really relying on. But, if I had to go into town and sit outside of a Starbucks so I could get caught up, I was doing that kind of stuff all the time. So if you want it bad enough, you'll make it work. So That's kind of what I've been doing.
Now, a lot of people sort of, think that, people want split cuts and prime cuts, and it's harder to sell, whole beef. Can you talk about sort of the customers you've been working with and, people's behavior? I mean, they're buying whole cattle, half cattle quarters. There really is a market out there for folks who want to do this.
Yeah, so it's amazing how much I had to learn, even though I'd already been in business for 5 years. I learned really quick, cubic feet wise on a freezer, what does it take? So, a quarter 5 cubic feet of freezer space. A half takes roughly 10, a whole takes roughly 16 to 17. And so I had to realize that there were people out there who had never done anything like this before. When you go to the store, you can buy frozen chicken and frozen pork, but most of the time your beef is fresh. It's not frozen.
Yeah. And
so we're so far removed. The first words out of their mouth was, I remember my grandparents used to do this, but I've never done this. And so you walk them through you can basically travel 8 hours with it frozen and be perfectly fine. And so people had this concept of, okay, I have to go buy a chest freezer, I have to go buy a generator, and then I'm going to take it an hour to my house. People had no concept of how easy it was to travel with frozen, product within reason. Or I had a few people buy hamburger, and so they ground their whole quarter to hamburger, and they couldn't believe that they didn't have to go home, cook it all, and then refreeze it. And so I had no clue how far removed people really were from their food system. And so honestly, I've done more education than I have anything else in this process, which has grown into a lot of people buying quarters. They've received their quarters and now they've already booked a half for the next time. And so for me, it's really encouraging. you're already seeing repeat customers and people that care and they want to know more. And I guess that kind of ties back into your technology question of, using tons and tons of social media to show people just everyday life and what that kind of looks like. And so I kind of utilize Facebook the most for that as my business account. And then I have my website as well that always has lots of pictures and different things.
And you're sold out. You're sold out all the way through the end of the year, basically.
Yeah, I'm sold out basically through 2020, and I already have about 10 to 15 or so booked in 2021.
Wow. And is slaughter capacity the biggest challenge to basically growing the business at this point?
Yeah, that's my biggest hang up right now is my butcher is trying really hard to get a freezer expansion.
Yeah.
And if he can do that, he's starting workforce in there as well. And so hopefully within the next 2 to 3 months, we'll be able to start killing maybe twice a week instead of just once a week. And so that could add 5 to 10 I could be taking in. And so everybody always asks me, how did you get so many butcher spots? Because around here in Kansas, at least, are booked out till about July of 2021 right now. And so when all of this was going on, every week I was just booking almost another month. And that's kind of how I got into so many, because a lot of people, they caught on too late, but I was already established. So I kind of had the upper hand of knowing to, make sure I kept keeping those spots. But now I just have 10 every month of 2021. So I've attained that many, I'll be good to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're not a farmer and you're watching, I mean, definitely, we love highlighting FBN members' businesses because this is a key part of the food system, and making sure that we've got a resilient food system, local slaughter, and local markets are really important. Also, it is a great potential business, for farms and ranchers who want to sell direct and work more closely with consumers. And I think, it's exactly right. Everyone is, and I think COVID has put food and the food system into much tighter focus. So people now suddenly, when you go to the grocery store and there's no beef on the shelf or there's no pork, you realize, you're a little more disconnected than you may have realized. But you can buy direct from farms, and you can meet farms directly, and that's what we're really excited to help start highlighting. And every state has slightly different rules. But then you also have, in order to sell across state lines, you have to be processing at a USDA certified and inspected facility. Can you talk about what it would take to either expand the business or what farmers in other states can do, the basic, the process that you went through to actually be able to sell the product?
Yeah, so I started out, basically I had a good relationship with my butcher already just because of my years in 4-H, and we had already always butchered up there. And so it actually sold last August, and so I had already taken like 3 or 4 runs of maybe 5 head up there. And so I had gotten to know the new butcher and his staff. And I think just having a relationship before you even start is so, we live in such a world where networks and relationships are really what it's about. And so that, and so anytime there's a spot that opens up, I'm usually the first phone caller. If somebody calls in there and says, hey, we're looking at quality beef, who do we call? I've worked hard to get that name to where, I get those phone calls. And so a lot of it's just networking and relationships and making sure that you're doing good in your community. If you have a good name to yourself, people are going to want to buy your product. And in small town, rural America, at least where I'm at, that means a lot. And so, and then just getting started, you got to get creative. You got to figure out, can you feed at home? How can you cut costs? What does it look like to, grow, all of your inputs so you can figure out what you need to charge so you can still make a profit. It's just simple business. It's really nothing complicated. I don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. You can do that though with your marketing. There's all sorts of different ways that you can do that. Honestly, I think one of the great things like FBN has always done is pulled their audience. You guys do a great job of asking us farmers and ranchers what we need. And so I do the same thing for my client base. I'm constantly running polls on, asking, hey, what cut are you most looking forward to? And then just always putting out resources. So I've worked really close with the Kansas Beef Council, Kansas Farm Bureau, and Kansas Livestock Association to make sure I always have really good resources that I can put out on my page or just share their promotional content too that deals with beef. And so you can get really creative without having to do a lot of thought because there's so much content out there these days.
Yeah, and the platforms that are available to you now are just unlike anything, a decade or two. You have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have social media, you have so many more low-cost marketing channels that you can use. And it sounds like that really, exploded the business, when COVID hit, back in March. And I think, we've seen it all over the country with, farmers selling hogs, via Facebook to avoid, having to cull. So there's, people are getting creative about it. And do you ever get customers wanting to visit the farm, or they come asking to come out?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask, but we're kind of in a hot spot here. We're right next to Emporia, Kansas. And so we have a Tyson plant that's not a kill facility, but it's more of a packaging facility. And then we have 3 or 4 major dog food plants. And so we've had major outbreaks here. Yeah. I think our case totals are still upper 60s, and we've had 8 deaths just in our county. Ooh. And so our farm has been pretty tight on who we're letting in and not right now. But in the future, I would love to do like a farm Saturday where people could come out, and see the animal that they're going to pick out. I've had a few people, if you followed my Instagram the last couple of days, I had a really good friend of mine, get to pick out her animal and name it. And so it was a really big deal. We did a lot of TikTok stuff with it. We had a lot of good times. And so I think a lot of that is going to happen. People want to be connected. They want to see what we're doing. And I think that's great. I think the more exposure we have, the more that we can show people that, hey, we're taking care of the land and we take care of our animals. I think that's where we need to be going. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm hoping as soon as my butcher can expand his cooler and get inspected, I'll be able to do on-farm sales. And so then it'll be like a week or Sunday or something, and people actually get to come out and pick up individual cuts and hamburgers. So that's kind of the direction we're looking. But, we're still in the dreaming phase right now too a little bit. So we're just trying to keep up with 2020 so far. It seems to have a lot of kinks in it.
Yeah, to say the least. A lot of farms have been locked down. I mean, that's as seen by my background here. We've been, totally shut down for the last 5 months. I mean, since March, basically. And California is obviously, got a lot of COVID activity, and I think it's months more until there's, any kind of return to normal in terms of any workspace or crowds. So that, of course, makes sense. So you're getting a lot of questions. You've got looks like Kale's, I see Cale Carlson on there wanting to come visit, but probably going to have to wait, Cale.
He's always welcome.
Right. And let's see if anyone has any questions for Jacquelyne. Feel free to drop them in the chat there. Looks like we have folks, still on from all over. I guess, Jacquelyne, are there any technologies or things you're looking at to help the business, or right now is it you've got so much to keep yourself busy that it's just a matter of keeping up with the demand? You're running as fast as you can here.
Yeah, right now there's not a ton of technologies that we could really implement. The one thing that we are doing is, though, we are updating a lot of our facilities. And so at our main feedlot, which is just across the section from where I'm sitting right now, we've updated our scale system. And so now we can live weigh cattle. We've tried to make everything so that one or, up to 2 people could probably do every job instead of having 3 or 4. And so we're just trying to become more efficient And then at my house, where I'm currently at, facilities, so where we actually background the cattle. So a lot of the time, because we farm also, we don't have time to do all the doctoring and stuff ourselves and get cattle straightened out, because we're not cow calf. We buy everything at around 400 to 500, raise them from there. And so we use a lot of backgrounding lots in the area, and so we're hoping by updating some of our facilities we'll be able to cut out one layer of paying somebody. And so instead of really putting in technologies, we're just updating facilities. You know, they've been here since, you know, my grandpa started the place, and so some of it was pretty old, but he was a really good welder, so stuff is in really good shape. And so we're just adding, you know, a building here and there, and different things like that. So nothing too fancy, but just enough to be able to get the jobs done and get them down.
All right, looks like you're getting some folks wanting to sell cattle to you now. Would you buy cattle direct from other currently use different services?
Absolutely. So right now we buy a lot of cattle direct from cattle buyers, and so we buy out of, one of our main buyers is in Nebraska, and he buys a lot of our cattle for us. We have another one in Georgia, right outside of Dublin, and so we do quite a bit of buying all over. And, you know, that's something, you know, who knows, maybe someday FBN will have a network set up where I can just get on there and say, hey, I'm looking for 6-weight calves in this price range. I need 85% black, you know, or Red Angus and Charolais with a black nose. So we're pretty specific of what we'll take here, but absolutely. If they're quality, I won't turn you down. So we do a lot of that, and then we also sell direct off the farm as well. And so we're getting ready to gather cattle, because I do live in the Flint Hills of Kansas. I'm pretty biased, but it's the best grass in the world in my opinion. And so we're getting ready to gather all of them up in the next couple weeks, and they've been sold direct off the farm as well.
That's great. Well, I like the way you're thinking. I think those are good ideas, and those would be exciting things to be able to do. I mean, you could imagine basically where, you know, folks like yourself could source direct from other ranches, and with more information and control on the livestock, that really becomes possible. And I think that could be a great thing for cow calf folks as well as folks further down, like what your business. I guess getting a question: do you do any organic or grass fed, or how do those?
Yeah, so I have a few that I did sell as grass fed, and so as soon as they come off of grass here, early August, I'll be selling them. I don't know why people charge more. It's just as good as quality as the grain fed. I think it's personally a preference, and if that's their preference, I will meet that. I did sell those for 15 cents higher, just because that's what everybody else is doing. But I'll be honest, when you get into the organics and, you know, the grass-fed niche of what I'm doing, I did find that I got yelled at more. And so I'm going to be honest, I just went and just sold our grain-fed cattle because, you know, those people just didn't have as many questions. And so it's been a unique experience, I guess, is where I can leave that. But I did sell some. I sold a few last year as well. We are rebuilding a fence trap on the backside of our feedlot, with the idea that next year we're hopefully going to sell about 20 grass-fed animals, because there is a demand, and if there's a demand and it's going to make me a profit, you can best bet I'm going to try to fill it.
And did you ever sell through farmers markets or anything like that, or has it always been, you know, through Leffler Pine?
Yeah, so I really wanted to sell through a farmer's market, and I went to all the meetings and everything, but there you have to charge sales tax, and as where I'm a producer and I'm at a custom plant, I don't have to charge sales tax on the meat, and so I feel like that's a huge benefit for not only my client, but also for me on book work. And then they also take a 10% commission here. and I only mark my cattle up maybe 15. And so that ate over half. And it took me, two nights of every week where I was going to have to sit at a stand and most likely just take orders as opposed to actually having beef that I could sell. And so for me, it just isn't going to work. But I know I have a lot of friends that sell pork that way and are super successful, but they're also closer to the bigger cities and can upcharge a little bit more than I can.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Well, Jacquelyne, congratulations on all your success in building the business. It's really been awesome to see, and awesome, to see the adaptability. And I think, producers all across the country have been, now trying to grapple with, how do you develop these alternate channels? And I think, the consumer is really changing, and the consumer has really changed here, in the face of COVID, not only in their preferences, but also in simply being more willing and being, understanding that they should be looking at buying direct, where if their average trip to the store is, you have shortages, or you have, that suddenly goes into question, then buying direct can be a great alternative. And so we definitely encourage everyone out there who's watching to go online, look for farmers in your area, come on to FBN's Facebook page, or look for folks like, especially if you're in Kansas, visit Leffler Prime Performance. We all hope to be able to support American, Canada, and Canadian farmers, with what we're doing here. So, we really thank you, Jacquelyne, for taking the time. And, this has been great, and we appreciate it. And so to everyone out there, thanks for joining us. And we will be back as FBN, and probably next week with another Instagram Live featuring some of our amazing members from around the country. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Charles. It's good to see you.